Hello and welcome to an amateur's adventure. And we've got a special episode for you because it's Bloodbath again. That time of the year when everyone comes out, we ignore the objectives completely and we just do what we want to do in the Spiky. Because that's how we roll up in Basingstoke, Reading. So with me, I've got Ben Dunford, a long-time member of the club and probably one of our better players, especially when compared to me, and Chris. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey James, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty
Yeah,
well. I'm
good,
looking
thanks.
forward to
Good,
going
yeah.
to America. I'm disappointed about missing the tournament, but
Yeah, it's unfortunate timing for you this time, isn't it? Just missing out.
yeah, literally flying out the day before.
Well, I
That's
gave you
okay.
the option. I did say when I was running this. Oh, like when's the best date? And you did say do it this one rather than the other one, but it meant you couldn't make it, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I think well we agreed on this because it was close to another time, and also the other option was right in the middle of the holiday I'd booked, and I didn't think that would be a good move to go. Yeah, don't worry, you go to Devon. I'll go wargaming for a day, and
Hmm.
I'll follow you down. I thought for the longevity of my relationship that I would I chose to go to Devon, which was glorious. But yeah,
Good choice.
I know. I think without further ado, we'll crack on. But first of all, Chris, do you mind introducing the scoring systems, which has been a long time special of the Bloodbath, and just give us a quick rundown of it?
So basically, it's your points is what you kill. It's not related to how much your opponent scored. Like if you both somehow wipe each other out in the same combat, I mean that is possible based on agilities. Then that's the ideal scenario. Technically, everyone's got maximum points there. So it's what you kill. Keeping stuff alive, does nothing. No point conserving stuff. So be aggressive, be a little bit silly sometimes. So you get your full whatever you killed plus the BSB and general points, and then the secondary objective. The objective is there still. Normal secondary objectives, they're just worth 500 points or half 250 each if contested. So it's literally just about playing quite quick and maybe getting rid of a little bit of those cagey engagements and just going absolutely straight into the fight basically.
Yeah, no, thank you. I've worked out that technically the maximum amount of points, as long as the army your opponent is bringing is 3,500, is about 13,200. So I'd be interested who the closest one is to that. Um, Ben, you're quite a tactically minded person. How do you approach something like this?
I think it's interesting because there's a couple of ways of playing it, isn't there? And there's so obviously the glass cannon type units. There's a lot of them that we're going to see in the lists here. Are particularly effective at this. So you can run in, kill a load of stuff, probably die in return, and everybody's happy to be honest because you score lots of points, they score lots of points. So you can go kind of full glass cannon with it, and there's a few lists that we're going to see that probably have done that. Um, there is obviously a hard counter to a glass cannon, and that's taking a good amount of shooting. And there's not many lists, but there are a few that have kind of gone for the counter meta and banked on the fact that a lot of people are going to be taking those glass cannons, and they might be quite successful as well. It's going to be a bit more matchup dependent, I think. But if you've got a list that can pump out a lot of relatively low strength shooting, and you get the right matchups, I think you could probably do quite well out of this. I'm not sure it particularly favours the kind of traditional mixed list. I suspect that you might want to lean into something a bit more. And actually, the my list probably is a bit too much of a mixed list, but we'll see. I mean, there's a few different takes on how to win a tournament like this that we're going to look at in the next however long. Um, and yeah, we'll see which one turns out to be the most successful.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about the shooting because that's what I sort of did last year, and I sort of finished about mid-table, and it really was matchup that where one match I did really well, and then another I just got ran over by David's KOE. Um, on yeah,
I'm seeing that again. Yeah.
right. Let's crack on. So first is Dan Tyre up, and for those eagle-eyed amongst you, he has gone for a bit of a theme and given some of his units names and stuff like that. I particularly like Bob the Boulder. Um, as it's O and G, Ben. Do you want to take first impressions?
Yeah, so I mean, this is Dan's version, I think, of Nashageddon. So he's got, it doesn't look like there's a huge amount of Nashers there, but he's got 2 units of 23 Nashers, 2 units of 10 Nasher Dashers, the two
Oh, yeah.
wrecking teams. There's quite a lot of doubling up there. I mean, one thing I would say is that if you're going to go Nashageddon, I think you could probably take more Nashers than this, Dan. I'm sure you've got more Nashers than this. So units of 23 are all well and good, but I think a unit of 30 is probably better. So I would have liked to have seen a few more Nashers maybe. And just drop the shooting altogether, because you've got a couple of skewerers there, but really I think you probably lean full into the Nashageddon theme and just go full Nasher if you can. I think Nashers generally are very matchup dependent, so there's some things that they're very good against, the kind of low agility or low to medium agility, not too much armor. They go through them very quickly. There's other things like some of the elf lists that might be a bit more problematic, and they do suffer a bit with maneuverability as well. So we'll see. I really like it. I took a Nasher style of list to the last Bloodbath, and it did all right. It had some games where it did very well and some games where it didn't. And I think that might be what Dan finds with this one. Just with a lot of these, it'll depend on the matchup, but no, overall, I think it's a good list. The Gargantula King general, I think is a brilliant idea. I don't think it's necessarily the most powerful thing in the Orc and Goblin book at the moment, but it's a really fun piece to play with. So I think regardless, I think Dan will have fun with this list.
What does a Nasher whistle do?
So it's a one use only thing. If when you blow it, you get I think you get an extra instance of maximized charge, if I remember correctly. So it basically just encourages all of your Nashers into combat. So if you call out the war cry and blow the
There's
Nasher
that's the
whistle,
war cry on them. They get war cry as well, do they? It's not just the Nashers get it as well. Nice.
so they get the +1 movement, which everyone gets. They don't get the additional maximized charge, I believe. So it'll make them give them a very long charge threat anyway when you do blow the Nasher whistle.
Yeah,
So that combined with the war cry is quite powerful in terms of getting your charges in.
it'll make a quick game.
Yeah,
Whether it all goes well or it all gets countercharged.
yeah.
And again, there's something to be said for that, because obviously the round. I don't think the rounds are too short, but the rounds are not the longest in the world, and you want to get through the game because you want to have maximum chance to kill each other. So having an army that's going to be like, right, turn 2, everything go, not too much thinking about it, seems like it could do quite well depending on agility matchups and things like that.
Well, I think that's a really important point as well, Chris. In that you really want to get through all 6 turns in this tournament. There is no benefit to either of you for only getting through 5 turns, and we are slightly tight on the round times, I guess. So I think people who can play their list, who know their list and can play it quickly, are going to benefit.
Yeah, I think for me, I love the Grey Green Idol partly because it's Res 8, but I think the Nashers combined with some of those smaller, like the Goblin Reaver units, could be really good because he can just hold you up for a turn 1 or 2, and then just go in, and then it's whoever's magic and dice pay off. I think so. I think by turn 4, this list will either be dead or all over you. So
And actually,
I quite like it.
yeah, the Great Green Idol works really well with the Nashers as well, because it gives out that reroll to 1, reroll 1s to wound bubble. So Nashers with their high volume of attacks, relatively high offensive skill as well, so they do hit quite a lot. Then they get those reroll 1s to wound as well. It combos really well with them.
Yeah, and with do they get the hereditary spell, the +1 to hit, or is that a different one with goblins?
So it is different for goblins. It's the hex version, so it's -1 to hit you, which is maybe slightly less good with this kind of list. You might want the +1 to hit rather than the -1. But he's got other spells which is going to be just as useful.
Yeah, no,
And he's
absolutely.
gone Thaumaturgy as well, hasn't he? Which is very offensive. if he explodes and miscast, well, a little bit of leaning into destroying them.
Yeah, might see some Wrath of Gods, some comets coming down.
Lovely. So overall, a good list, and it'll be interesting to see how this one turns up. Right, Owen Holborn. Did I play him at Art of War?
I believe he was at Art of War, yeah,
Was he, or did
quite
I not play
possibly.
him? I can't remember. I have so many Highborn Elf players. Sorry, no. So
Possibly a few too many beers as well.
yes, I was too drunk. That's what we're going to put my performance on. That I was too drunk, not that I played awfully at times. But anyway, um, so I'll take this one because I quite like this list. I think I love Dread Knights. Just so iconic from reading Malice Darkblade books and stuff like that. And I just think that sort of cowboy Dread Prince is just so annoying running around that he's got something to hide in and then just sort of come out and say surprise in the Shadow Riders. And I think because there's actually a reasonable amount of monsters and other stuff, the hunting chariots are going to have quite a lot of targets to have a good effect on. And yeah, so I really like this list. It's nice and fast. It gets in. It's got a good amount of chaff just to hold you up, and the magic itself, because of the Dread Knights and stuff. I do wonder whether actually the better because they've already got the great weapon. I think they're standard strength 4, so they go up to strength 6. I do wonder whether the only thing would be to take evocation, reroll to hit, reroll to wound. I know they hit really well, but just
Mm.
something like that. That's my only thoughts on it. Or maybe even can they take occultism? These guys?
I think so.
Actually,
I
maybe
think
not
so.
occultism because that's reasonably short range on some stuff. But I don't know. I'm just not sold by Cosmo in this. But that's my thought. Do like this list. But I don't think it's going to win. I don't think it's. I think it's too matchup dependent. I think if you can deal with the Dread Knights, you just eat this list. That's my only thought on it.
I think what I do like is so it's a very counter-punchy kind of list. So it's got a decent amount of shooting. It's so with the auxiliaries, the Shadow Riders, I don't think they do shoot actually. I
No,
think
they
you have
don't
to
shoot.
buy the upgrade
No.
to get them to shoot. But with the auxiliaries and the repeater battery and the hunting chariots, it's probably got more shooting than most of the lists that are going to be here. So it can stand off a little bit and wait because I mean people are going to be coming to you in this kind of meta, I think. And then it's got a lot of counterpunch. So the Dread Knights with a long charge range are going to hit hard. The hunting chariots can be used to throw in and do some damage. And obviously the Dread Prince as well, in whichever unit he decides to go in, is going to hit quite hard. So I think it can stand off for a turn or two and still have enough time to take a lot of points, I think, in the latter part of the game.
Yep, no fail. Chris?
What do the chariots? Do they slow other monsters down, or they do extra damage to towering presence or something?
I think they do. I think they slow monsters down, but I think they're only D3 wounds. I've got a feeling. I know they're quite
Yeah,
short
I
ranged,
think so.
which is
Yeah,
probably
so
quite useful with the Dread Knights.
they do something to monsters' movement, definitely. I can't remember what it is, whether it's taking away an instance of maximized or something like that. But yeah, they're definitely something for some of the monsters to worry about.
And they're good chaff as well. You can come,
Mm.
and they can block you off as well. So there's a lot of chaff in there just to hold you up if he needs to.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
they don't come up against monsters, then the hunting chariots, I think, are largely redundant. That's
Yeah,
the only thing. So it's 400 points that there are a lot of monsters here, so they probably will get some joy. But if you do come up against a list that doesn't have many, then they might be slightly wasted points.
I do wonder if he could have put 3 repeater batteries because actually I think because of the counter punch he's got, 3 repeater batteries of this of 8 shots each should just murder units as they come forward.
the hunting chariots are still straight 5 impact hits, aren't they? So they still hit. Like, obviously their shooting's not quite as good as the repeater batteries, but they are still a chariot. And if you
True.
like slam both of them in with something else, it's could do something to a unit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, fair
It's
one.
lose Swift Stride. I just looked it up. It loses Swift Stride if they hit it with the harpoons.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
interesting counterpunch list, but I don't think it's. I think it's got too much. It's too dependent on the Dread Knights doing the work, and if you can get rid of them, you're in for a good chance.
Interesting. I can't see where it says it's just monsters. I think they lose Swift Stride and everything, so it could do Cav as well.
Oh,
Unless
that's
I'm
not useful
missing
against
something.
Demon Legions.
Okay.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, right. Any more on this list?
No.
So we've got Joe Matthew Man. It's a cool name. Speaking of which, we've got Demon Legions. Who knows anything about Demon Legions?
So I do play demons sometimes.
Oh, not volunteered.
So I'm happy to talk about it a little bit. It's so there's a couple of demon lists here. This one, it feels to me quite lightweight, and so I mean there's a lot of kind of low res wounds to go after, which has so generally he's got quite a lot of maneuverability. So the sirens are really quick. I mean, with centipede legs, I think they're movement 10. The mage black gremlins, they ambush on the wizards. They can be a real pain. And if you've got if you've got say a Tomb King player, which we do have a Tomb King player, or one of the vampire players who's trying to protect their necromancer, they can be a real problem for you. And the units will hit quite hard. The clawed fiends are really fast. They're, again, movement 10, I think. Brazen beasts are quite fast. So he's paying a lot of his points for good maneuverability here. What I worry about slightly is just what happens if it comes up against something that's got any kind of shooting. Because all of these wounds are quite easy to take. I mean, it's a demon list. There's not very much armor. Most of it's the kind of normal 5+ Aegis. But there's no greater demon to really go after. The Deceiver is a greater demon, I guess, but it's one of the smaller ones. It'll sit in one of the units, and whichever unit that greater demon sits in is going to be really difficult to deal with because it gives out a lot of passive buffs. So I don't know, if it goes in with the Succubi or the Myrmidons, either of those units will become really difficult to deal with in combat. It's just whether a maneuverable list in this kind of meta is necessarily going to do well. I'm not sure whether you just want more of a kind of blunt stick to hit somebody with, which is perhaps how some of the other players have gone.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. I think I'm just thinking with the number of monsters that are out there, I think, and the number of monsters that are mobile, I think this list could struggle against them, even if it does have the Deceiver in there in one of the units. I just think a monster and something else between the Thunderstomps and everything else, they're just going to go through this list or they won't be able to touch it as much. I know the Brazen Beasts are quite strong and the Clawed Fiends have an advantage, but they hit hard, but once they've hit, that's it. So I think this list could have some problems.
I think one of the things I'm slightly influenced by is that this list I think has a high skill barrier, which is why I don't think I would be able to make this work. So if I was to play a list like this, I think I would be definitely be coming towards the bottom. Now Joe is probably a better player than me, so if he can make this work, then fair play to him, because I think this is one of the harder lists to use. But obviously, the harder lists to use do often have a higher payoff as well. So if he can get everything working as it should do, then he'll probably do well enough with it. But I do think it's a hard list to make to get all of those points out of.
No, it's a fair one. Chris, any comments on this?
Well, I don't wish to. Hopefully, it's not a list problem.
Does the Greater Demon have the path on it, or am I just missing something? Like
So
what
I
magic?
think the Deceiver gets Protean magic. So it
Oh,
gets
so that'd be why.
it gets the number one spell from all of the different
All of
decks,
it can take. Ah, makes sense.
I believe.
Fair enough.
Which is, I mean,
It's
it
not
was
very
really
good in
useful
it's not very
ability.
good in combat, or is it?
So it is the one that takes attacks from whoever it is next to. So it depends who you're fighting. If you're fighting something with a lot of basic attacks, I think it boosts its own attacks. So against
Yeah.
ogres, for example, does really well. Not that we've got any ogres here this time round. If you're fighting one attack infantry, then it doesn't get many attacks. It's not that great. If you're fighting something with lots of attacks, then it tends to do better.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it
I've
adds
changed
the
my
number
mind
of
about
attacks,
that
I
because
think.
yeah.
So basically, if it's facing a big, well, is it a character? It can be a character, couldn't it?
I think
Yeah.
so.
So if it's in base contact with the character, it can do it on a character. So then it could be quite.
Yeah,
It's sort of like a Van,
yeah.
the old Van Horseman speculum type job, isn't it? But just for attacks, like where you add your opponents to it and just screw with them.
So it's kind of like the changeling, I guess, in many
Yeah.
ways.
I'll say one thing for it, like because it's so quick, it's got a much higher chance of getting into combat. So if you're worried about time or something like that, it's going to go and it's going to get those flank charges and the other bits and pieces that just kind of might bring it to it. So yeah, actually, yeah, Ben, you're spot on. If Joe knows how to use this and brings his A game, then actually this could be quite an interesting list to try and face.
I guess the other thing is that because it's a lower points value that we're playing, there's going to be more board space available.
Mm.
So he's got room to manoeuvre, which he might not have in a 4,500 point game.
And because he hasn't gone for greater demons, he's actually got a lot more units, which could pay off. I mean, there's some armies here with like 4 units and stuff, so he's going to surround them. Okay, so yeah, quite intrigued by this list now. Let's see what it does. Right. Ooh, hang on. Right. The next Demon Legions list, and this is a Legion of Sins one. Legion of Wrath, which I assume is just angry, Corn-esque type.
Yeah, I think that's what someone's done. They've looked at Bloodbath, and obviously Ninth Age. It's no longer the Chaos Gods. It's all the different sins and that. But they've gone blood, corn, do this, and I like that. That's really leaning into the theme. I think there of just going, what's the best way to kill as much as possible and not worry about it. And well, we'll see if it works.
Yeah, so
I
it's
think
certainly good.
I think that Tony's decided that he's got enough friends and doesn't need to make any more, and so he's brought a list from probably the most complicated of the auxiliary books just to make people read it.
But no one will read it, so we can literally tell them anything.
Yeah,
I'll get to reroll ones all the time, everything.
yeah. But in all honesty, I think this is probably about the ideal list to bring something like Bloodbath. Because I don't know whether you two know about the Legions of Sin and what benefits you get from being Wrath in particular.
No.
But it's
I know they can only take like 3 different units, hence why the list is this. But apart from, I didn't know what the buffs were for each one.
so the idea is that with all of the Legions of Sin, you accrue sin tokens as you go through the game, depending on which sin you are. You'll there's certain actions that will build up the number of sin tokens that you've got, and when the sin tokens hit a certain threshold, then you get a bonus. But it's not just you that gets the bonus; it's your opponent that gets the bonus as well, and it's your opponent that can also top up the sin tokens.
Yeah.
So as the game goes on, your opponent has the choice of whether to kind of play into this sin mechanic, or whether to try and avoid it. Now, the thing with the Wrath mechanic in particular is that to charge up the sin tokens, you have to make charges. So I think if you have 2 charges in a phase, you add a token. If you have 3 charges in a phase, you add 2 tokens. Now, the reality of this is that in Bloodbath, both sides are going to be charging as much as they possibly can, you would think, because you need to get into combat really to take the most points. So you are almost certainly going to be racking up quite a lot of sin tokens quite quickly. And when you do get to 5 sin tokens, you get to reroll ones in combat. Both sides get to reroll ones in combat. And when you get to 10, then I think you reroll ones to wound as well, I think.
That's really good.
That's absolutely leaning into the Bloodbath thing there, right? Because you're giving your opponent a buff, but you don't really care as long as you're killing, if you want to kill me back even harder, excellent, well done. I'll take my points, you have yours, it'll be great.
That should be a really fun list to play for that, but also with the witchcraft as well, it's quite clever. So it overcomes a lot of that. Also, that will probably re-rolling ones to hit will probably play into their advantage quite a lot because demons are quite high agility, obviously apart from the scourge there. So I thought, yeah, no, this has got to be looking at top half of the table or possibly one of the potential winners. Also, Tony's an excellent player as well.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, definitely. So I can't remember whether it's reroll ones to hit or to wound, but I think either way, any rerolls are going to be good. And then I think when you do get up to the maximum number of sin tokens, I think it then gives you a bonus on your charge. Actually, I might have to double check.
I've got it on my phone. Hang on a sec. I'll have a look.
So you get whatever the Wrath Greater Dominion is, which I'm just trying to work out what that is.
The initial thing is all units reroll ones in the first round of combat with the 5+ sin tokens. And the 10 pluses, they get their dominion of whatever it is.
Yeah, so the Dominion of Wrath in this case. I can't. It's not in the book, is it? It's in the actual demon book rather than the Legions of Sin book. So I can't remember what it is. I think either way, the general mechanic of giving your opponent buff as well as you a buff, especially the rerolls in combat, I think in this is going to mean that not only does Tony do quite well in this tournament, I suspect that all of his opponents are going to do reasonably well as well, which is quite a nice list to bring. I know I joked about him not needing any friends from this, but I think actually people are going to want to play this list because you're probably going to take some points off it as well.
Yeah, between those Hellhounds and Furies, and you'll probably get at least one of the Brazen Beasts and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you're right. Also on the plus side, because of the list, the points actually for this tournament, at least you can't take 2 Scourges.
Yeah. A Scourge is really difficult to deal with in any game, so I think that is going to be hard for people to deal with, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So, yeah, see what happens with Tony. Right, Joe Palmetta and his Hobgoblins.
Yeah.
I think Joe's done this a couple of times. He's brought some of the, well, I mean, Tony's done it this time as well, but some of the slightly, weirder edge lists that perhaps don't see. Well, I don't know if some events don't allow them as well, but also, yeah, they're a little bit different because obviously this kind of thing, totally fine using it Bloodbath, even if they're not the, perfect balance that is at the top of the thing. They're a bit over the place sometimes.
So this list, so I'm pretty sure Hobgoblin is like charging in the flank, like charging in the rear, and like shooting there. With the smaller points, but a normal size board, this should do okay to well. Like it should have some advantages there. It's quite fast, so it can pick its fights as well. It's got good magic as well. It adds some mobility and also promotes the punchiness of the list. So I think it's got a chance.
I think it's
isn't it? Yeah.
It's one of those ones that's a bit anti-meta. So he's he's got good tools to deal with some of the glass cannon units that we're going to see. Some of the blasted plains emissaries, I think, are the ones with blunderbusses. I think
Sounds about right.
So I mean that's going to make a mess of some units, definitely, and a lot of his army will shoot. So the Hob cataphracts, I think, are ones that can shoot and are semi decent in combat as well. He's got some core units that can shoot. So there's a decent amount of shooting here, which, along with the bear dogs, which can fight, the cataphracts, which can fight. I think there's enough in there to give the hobgoblins a decent chance in a game like this. The hobgoblin book probably isn't as strong as some of the other books, so it automatically struggles a little bit from that. But I mean, Joe's used it quite a few times now, so he knows how to get the best out of it. I think that there's every chance that a list like this could do all right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's got a reasonable chance. So there's nothing here that I think you're right, because it's got a good balance between shooting and combat, and I just think that space on the board will play to his advantage, and the fact
I
that
think
no one else will
maybe,
know at all what goes on.
yeah, what he does against something that's fast and flies, of which we've got a few kind of big dragon type things. We've got the Scourge. He might struggle perhaps to avoid some of the combats that he doesn't want, because he's not going to want to engage straight away necessarily with a list like this. So if he has something that comes at him a bit too quickly, then it might be a problem.
Yeah, it's a fair one. The only advantage is he's got quite a few cheap units to sort of, well, as long as it doesn't fly, to at least sort of feed some of the non-flying stuff some chaff just to keep it
Die
at
in
bay.
the right place.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see how this one goes. But I think you're right. I think it could struggle with some of the, especially some of the VC lists. With the VC list, I'm thinking of we'll see later.
I've just had a look as well. I think everything but the big unit of levies, every single unit can shoot in some capacity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
A bit mad.
Shooting is what this
It's like
army
bows,
does.
even if it's bows, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, it has a lot of shots in there.
Hmm. Is it enough to take down a dragon? Is the question. How many bow shots does it take to take down a dragon? And that might be more than
Somebody do
Joe's
the
got.
maths on that.
I think yeah.
The,
How much a dragon and
the,
scourge? I can tell you, it's more than 48 Sylvan archers.
the Sky Mountain ballistas have a slightly better chance, right? They've got like ogre blunderbuss type thingies, I think, because they're like mini ogres.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got the
But yeah,
multiple shot ones.
I think yeah,
They've
depends on.
Yeah, so they would get 3d6 shots, I think. The Sky Mountain emissaries. So I mean, you can roll high and do some good damage with those.
Yeah, but praying for good shooting is like it will never pay off when you want to.
Hmm.
Most of the time, it lets you down.
Says a man from experience.
Yep, scarred from it. Never again is a bow gonna come out and do anything with this. Right. Okay, we're on to our first VC player. So, this is one of the ones that I think Joe would struggle against. It was tried. Who tried it last year? Someone tried this last year with double Monstrous Revenant, and I think he got unlucky on one game, but on two games he played, it really paid off. So I think, especially when you double that up with the Vampire Spawn getting around, although it's a small unit, it just means you've got plenty of threats, and you've got enough between the characters and the Dark Coach. You've got enough autonomous stuff that can keep you quite mobile, and the Varkalax. So I think this thing's going to be in your face. And it's sort of like a VC version of the flying circus that Highborn Elves can do. Yeah, I think it's quite a good list.
And
Yeah,
you know, I'm sorry, you first,
no,
Ben.
go for it, Chris.
they've clearly understood the brief, right? Because they haven't. There's no like necromancer and a unit of 40 zombies that's never going to die, sort of thing at the back. You've got a unit of skeletons, partly just to fill your core up, but then ghouls that are little bit more offensive as the core goes, and then the vampire spawn and the Varkalak are very go forward, hit things and kill it.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me slightly is that the vampire count general is what 830 points, I think, and he's only 4 HP. Now he does have a good Aegis save, so I think he's got 4 up Aegis, but 4 HP for 830 points feels like things could go wrong if you get a bit unlucky with your Aegis saves.
I think this is
And
what happened to the list last year. You got one, there was a cannon shot or something, and it went through it.
or even a poor kind of combat and things start to crumble. You come up against some static combat res, and the vampire courtier to a certain degree as well. So 560 points is obviously a lot cheaper, but still only 4 HP. So it's not impossible to be unlucky with either an artillery hit or a round of combat. Things don't go your way, and suddenly you just pop him basically.
Yeah, no, and once you pop that one, you've probably won the game. I think that's probably your key threat to go after. If you can beat that, you can beat the others.
I mean, they are great because they're so maneuverable, and I know that Mikey has been using them quite a lot in the last couple of years as well, and with a good deal of success. So obviously they are a strong choice. You probably just need to make sure that they don't get put in a position where they can lose those kind of lose a combat on static combat res or get sniped by something. There's not many things here that are going to snipe monsters, I don't think, because we haven't got any cannons or anything like that. But there's still certainly enough things that could cause a 4-wound model a problem.
Yeah. So basically, they need to avoid combats where they've already got their own skeletons or ghouls or something else sitting on their own because they don't want to lose to the static.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think the vampire spawn is really clever. I think you've got. I think it's a really good addition from last year's list. That between that and the Varkalak, suddenly it's not going in alone, and it's actually going in with some quite punchy stuff that you can start. And because they fly and they're very fast, I think you're gonna catch some people out quite a lot.
And the
So
vampire spawn aren't the toughest thing in the world. They're likely to probably do more wounds than they give up in the fight.
So would you go for the 2 vampire spawn units of 3 like that, or would you go for 1 unit of 6? Because I'm more used to seeing a unit of 6, but I don't honestly know which option would be better.
So I've found this with Kestrels actually. I think the smaller footprint sometimes pays off because just because you can get into places that a unit of 6 won't, and you can have a bigger impact, and you can just turn people's flanks and give them horrible choices. Whilst a unit of 6 is actually really difficult to find somewhere to put it sometimes, even with lots of board space.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he manages the discipline bubble as well, because the revenants aren't going to be a big bubble, I don't think, because they're not towering presence. So he's only going to have a relatively small bubble, so he's going to have to be careful how wide he plays, I think.
No, but the Dark
most
Coach is autonomous.
Right? They're almost all vampires, eh? They don't
I
need it.
suppose.
No, the vampire spawn aren't autonomous, but or are they? They might be actually.
They might be, but I think they're
Yeah, I
probably
think
low
they are.
discipline.
I think the only thing, I think the Dark Coach is autonomous, the Varkalak's autonomous. I think the Vampire Spawn and Torch, yeah. So I think the only things that are going to be coming down in centre are the skeletons, ghouls, and bat swarms.
Yeah.
I think this is one to watch. It'll be interesting. So best of luck, Jay. Right, we've got Glenn Wilkinson on Warriors of Dark Gods. So when I said earlier on the chat that I thought when I said Tom Clue's list was like a punch in the face, I actually meant this one. I got the name wrong. I think Glenn
Yeah.
Wilkinson's list is like being just someone walking up to you and punching you in the face. Nothing subtle, no talking about it, no threatening. You're just going to come up and hit you in the face.
Hey, there's 5 Warhounds there. That's definitely some tactical acumen can be done with those.
That's just after it's punched you and knocked you down. It just sort of comes up and marks its territory. That's all they're there for.
Yeah, that unit of chosen knights with the chosen lord in there, presumably in there anyway, unless he runs him solo, is really difficult to deal with.
And even like it, yeah, it's so versatile with greed.
I mean, I guess what he doesn't have is lots of different threats because he's got so many points in that chosen knight unit. Unless he runs the chosen lord solo, which I think would be a perfectly viable option, because unless you come up against something that can really take down a chosen lord, again, we've not got any cannons, we've not got many war machines at all. If he runs him solo, I think then that's a good another threat that you've got. If he does run them in with chosen knights, there's a chance that you just avoid the chosen knight unit as much as possible, chaff it, avoid it, and try and take down everything else. And everything else is hard hitting, but it is gettable.
The only one I don't like is the Sloth Warriors. I don't think they hit hard enough.
Well, it's interesting that he's gone with sword and board on them.
Yeah.
With Zealot's banner to give them the extra attacks, but actually they're extra attacks at strength 4, AP 1, which is possibly not making the most use out of the Zealot's banner. And I think especially when you're trying to get points, as many points as possible, maybe finding the points for great weapons or halberds would have been a better option.
What's the one that allows you to go +1 strength after you've won the first round of combat?
Gluttony.
Gluttony. So if it's sword and board, I think gluttony is really good. If it's sloth, I think you should have gone, well, anything, halberds, paired weapons, anything with a big output.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for him to score a lot of points with that unit, and it's going to be hard for other people to score a lot of points from that unit, which might make it harder for Glenn to get the bigger wins, potentially. It depends how the Chosen Knights do a lot of this, but I think the Warrior unit might struggle to get a lot of points quickly.
The one thing about Chosen Knights, I mean, this is me as a Sylvaneth player. I'm just not scared of them. They're res 4. But actually against some of the ogres or orcs and goblins, actually they'll be really, really tough. And some of the other units.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also I love Forsaken ones. Not when I'm playing them, but I think they're such a good unit for their point value as well.
And they're good fun, and the Doom Lord's good fun as well. I think
Yeah,
that
the Doom.
there's some
You don't
really
see that
really
often,
good.
do you?
Yeah, there's
Also,
some
he's got a
really
massive footprint on that behemoth, hasn't he? He's like taken half the table.
yeah. There's some units that'll be really good fun to play with, I think, in that list.
So yeah, good luck, Glenn. Ben Crouch, a Spiky Club member that relocated to Kent and plays with. Oh, where does Wes play? What are they called?
Canterbury Crusaders, is it?
That's the one. Yeah.
I think there's a few people coming up from Canterbury. I think Glenn might be one of them as well. So there's a cohort coming up from that
There's
area.
at least 3 of them because they asked me, can I make sure they don't base round 1? Which yes, I can do that. I'll make sure we don't
That's good.
get any spiky v spiky or try and separate people out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they came up last year as well. I know Ben was certainly there.
Yeah, and Glenn was as well.
Yeah. Okay, so I love a shrieking horror.
I
I
don't.
the only thing I think about this list is I really hope the Barragard work. I love the idea of them, but you just don't really see them because they're forced out by the units.
Mm.
Yeah, I like the list, but I just think the only thing I would say about it is I think he's relying on the Shrieking Horror and the Vampire Spawn to hold his flanks, and the Vampire Spawn with Frenzy are a bit dodgy. And if that fails, then he could be looking at something in his front and the flank, and that's when VC don't really like it up them, as it were. That's my
I
only
mean,
thing with that.
so I don't think I want to play this list because I think the Shrieking Horror is horrendous for orcs and goblins. Because whilst orcs now get their kind of minimized discipline tests and things like that, their base leadership has been lowered, and so the highest you can get to is 8. So anything that messes around with the discipline mechanic really hits orcs and goblins hard, and I think this one would cause me quite a lot of problems.
Fair one.
Also,
Yeah,
I like
no.
the fact
And
that
I
you said
think
about the. I mean, it has got more wounds, but it's saying about the other Vampire Lord being 830 points and a big investment. And then this one's like, no, I can do a little bit more than that.
but it does have more HP though, so I think it's got more of a chance of surviving. I don't know how easily it recovers its wounds, but I suspect it probably can without too much trouble. But I think the fact that you've got 3 orc and goblin players here means that it could get paired up in some quite favourable matchups.
Yeah, but I think a big unit of orcs may. The question is, does a big unit of orcs like Iron Orcs go through Barragard, or do Barragard go through them? That'll be an interesting fight.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a vampire in there with them, I guess.
Oh yeah, seen. Yep, sorry.
So yeah, I think it could do.
Hmm.
I think I don't know how well it'll do overall, but I think it would do well against me.
Yeah, I think if Ben takes on some players, it will do really well. I think it will have problems with Glenn's list. I think Glenn's list will do really well against this.
Mm. I
But
mean, it doesn't. So this list won't die to shooting easily. It's got
no.
a good number of hit points in it, and it can recover them. I think he's got the one that lets him bring up skeleton units as well, whichever that is, against
It's
the
the
Netherworld. Is
Lich
it? I
one,
thought
yeah.
he had.
Yeah, the Lich one.
So he can raise some units back as well. So I think he's not going to be taken off easily. Can he get the points that he needs to do really well? I'm not sure. I think he'll do well with it, but I'm not sure necessarily it'll go on to be maybe podium. I think it might struggle to get the really big wins to get podium.
No,
Also, I
cool.
just had a look at the Shrieking Horror. The Hobgoblins might do quite well in this because although the Shrieking Horror is obviously it's red 6, but it's only got a 5 at fortitude and no armor at all. So enough arrows might just, you get enough 6s, that thing just might go down in a couple of rounds.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think if you get lucky enough, you you take it off. But the amount of time I've got with strength 3 shooting, and I've got nearly there with nearly poisoned, and suddenly I'm like, oh great, it's got 2 more wounds back on again, and it can move around quite a bit, so it can just move out of range for a turn and then come back to you.
Yeah, it's the getting wounds back that's really disheartening, isn't it?
Mm.
You get it down to 1 wound or something, and then it comes back a couple of turns later with 3.
Right. So yeah, Ben's got a good list, got a chance. So we'll see. He's also been playing this for a while, playing VC for a while now, so he knows how they work.
I like the fact that he's got the Vanguard in your face ghouls as well, just to
Oh yeah,
really push quickly.
Right, Matt Champion with Silver Nels.
And he's done it properly. He hasn't brought Druidism to a tournament about killing things.
Yeah, but I probably would have dropped the master and just gone for double strength buff. So I'd have had an adept Cosmo and adept shamanism if he was going to do that, because he's got lots of units there that require at least one of the strength buffs to be off, and everyone will just stop perception of strength at the right moment, and then you've got strength 4 or well strength 5 with the 5 wild huntsman elves or dryads. I think that's one big thing, because also the dryads with the clearing spirits are really good. This is something I think that's quite good, but I think his magic setup is going to punish him, and he just won't get that combat punch that he requires to blow through units, which you need to do with Sylvanels. And the problem with not taking a Druid as a master when you've got, or Druidism when you've got 3 units of 9 super archers, is that you are eventually going to take them out, and they are a lot of points. So
the Sylvan Sentinel's like the old Waywatcher style one.
yeah, the Pathfinders are like the old Way Watchers, and the 2 Sentinels are the poisoned ones. But I'm afraid, Matt, I think your magic setup is going to cost you.
So I think what he can do is have a good chance of taking out some of the big single models that are going to be flying around. So 9 Pathfinders and 18 Sylvan Sentinels have got a good chance of taking down a dragon or a scourge or a monstrous revenant or whatever it might be. They're going to have to do it probably fairly early in the game, because, like you say, they are going to get targeted, and you're probably going to lose those points as the game goes on. But they've definitely got an answer, I think, to some of those bigger monsters that are going to be around.
He's also got the bolt thrower bow on the chieftain, but yeah, I'm also scarred by that. You always think he's going to hit, just don't need to roll a 1, but you'll keep rolling 1s.
But is that the one that doesn't have quick to fire, and you put it on a really like mobile
No. So
marquee?
that'll be fine. So what? Yeah, but he'll put the chieftain in the Sylvan Sentinels, which means that instantly gets light troops. But it still means it's
No, I
only
was meant
moving
more that
10
you
inches.
didn't run it without that, and therefore you were hitting on trees all the time instead.
No. My problem is I couldn't move it further than 5 inches. So I thought I could move it 20 inches, and then so I'd made a different error. But I just think it's a lot of points invested in something that I've just had far more success when on a mage, to be honest.
So I think there's a couple of things about Matt's list which perhaps are why I don't necessarily think he's going to be top of the tables. I think one is that he's not really got any scoring. So he's got one unit of archers that scores, and that's it. I think, James, unless
Yeah,
anything
that's
else
correct.
there scores that
No, nothing else.
doesn't look like it. So he's not going to be winning any objectives. So that's 500 points a game that he just can't get, really. Which is not the end of the world, because you're going to get a lot more points from killing stuff than you are from objectives. But it is 500 points that I think he's just not going to get. And the other thing is the slightly ironic thing that I think Matt Champion might find that he doesn't have enough champions if he does come up against some of the dragons and scourges and things, because the only units he's got champions in are the 2 really small kind of skirmishy dryad units, and he can't challenge out with any of the others. So as soon as any of those single characters get into his units, they just go through them in one turn.
Yeah, I think it depends on the faction, but I think it also isn't. It's just not going to have the output in combat. So the Wild Huntsman with Silver Blades are going to be strength 4 unless he gets perception off, for instance, and that will be great against like orcs or something. But actually, you're still weaning on 4s, and it only takes 1 bad roll, and that's it. Game over.
Mm.
I mean, against the sloth, these aren't like. Yeah, he's gonna have real problems against high res stuff, like anything res 4 and above. which, when you think about the number of ghouls we've seen, number of orcs and goblins, warriors of the dark gods, it's quite a
You
tough
might match up
meta.
better into the other elf.
Yeah, as long as you pair it, yeah, we could fix it so the map only plays elves.
Don't they play dancers out agility other elves? So then they'd.
Yeah, yeah, that would certainly work. Yeah, no, unfortunately, I think this list is going to be a bit more to the bottom table. But Matt, prove us wrong, or prove me wrong. Right, Darren Williamson, he's back on the highboards.
I
So
think you almost need to look at Darren's list and Tom's list together because they're so similar. It's almost like they were writing it together, to be honest. So I think that Darren's got a big unit of Rymanites, which Tom doesn't have. But the big unit of Swordmasters, they both got the Initiate. They both got, I think, the cores not too dissimilar, and then they've got a couple of characters each. I think Tom's got a big dragon, whilst Darren's got the slightly more magic orientated character setup with a griffin instead of a dragon. But the Swordmasters, I think, are a great choice in this kind of tournament, which is why they've both gone for them. I'm sure 30 Swordmasters. Even if you shoot off 10 of them before they get into combat, even if you shoot off 15 of them before they get into combat, they're still going to do a lot of damage.
So I wrote a list for John actually that I said take this, and the big difference was I didn't take Initiate or didn't put an Initiate, but there's a way of putting an Ancient Dragon and a Mage on a dragon with. I put Master Cosmology, but it looks very similar as well. just without the Knights of Rama. I just thought, yeah, that's how you do it. So I think I prefer Tom Cruise's list out of the two of them, but yeah, they're very similar.
I think I agree.
They're just going to grind out any infantry, basically. Well, not grind them out, but they'll win the first 2-3 rounds of combat against any standard infantry unit, just straight up, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree, James. I think I prefer Tom's list just because I think the dragon gives you a bit more flexibility. The griffin is great and will do a certain amount of work, but I think the big dragon, when we see Tom's list in a minute, is such a big threat. It just gives you a little bit more kind of board control. I mean, the Swordmasters are great, so I think both of these lists, they're gonna get a lot of points just from the Swordmasters. So both Darren and Tom, I think, have absolutely kind of done what I think anyone would do, picking a highborn elf list for this tournament and just taken an absolute ton of Swordmasters.
So the only thing I'd have changed, which is what I put in John's list, that I recommended to him, but he didn't take, is drop one of the Aleem Reavers in the spears and take 2 units of 19 archers. And the reason I'd say that is after having to experience that in the Art of War, they are such a good support to the Swordmasters because they can kill all that strength 3, strength 4 shooting and protect them, or at least draw some of the fire. So the one weakness with Swordmasters, I think, is they're just going to suck up so much firepower and magic.
But there's not a lot of firepower here.
Well, this is the thing. If they get the right matchup, I think both highborns could do really well. If they get the wrong matchup, I think they're going to struggle. I think the Swordmasters just are going to struggle.
I think there's few enough shooting lists that you can. I think it's a decent choice for this one.
Yeah, no.
I think they'll be unlucky if they come across more than one army that's got a decent amount of shooting.
But that's the thing. You hit one army of decent shooting, and I think that takes top spot from you. But I think you're right. I think both highborn lists should be top half.
I do like the Stalker standard on the Knights of Rhymer. I think that's a good choice. That gives you a few options, and really with such a big threat range that the Knights of Rhymer have, I think that's a decent option to have.
Yeah, no, agreed. Cool. Right. Obviously, it wasn't Tom Clue's next because I'm not that organised. I realised too late and then was rushing for this. So we got David. I know David brought KOE last year because he ran me over with them. I think I got like 300 points or something. It was pretty bad. I think it was me and John were I think I was the lowest scoring person in round one because of it.
I don't know very much about KOE.
From what I remember from last year, this looks fairly similar.
Yeah, but I don't think it had the forlorn 30 men at arms. I think he had another night block. No, he did. He did have the forlorn men at arms. It's pretty much the same list. I think he said he didn't have the Sky Heralds. He just had a bigger unit of Pegasus Knights. That's probably the only difference, I think.
And has he dropped the? I remember last year. This was in the commentary. It just happened to stick in my brain that he had like after he's taken one multiple wound, he no longer takes multiple wounds, but he only had it on a guy with 3 hit points. So it was sort of like, good luck with that, Don't think that's anymore.
David's got a pretty ruddy feet.
That might have been. They might have gone through another redo since then, to be fair, but I can't remember.
That does sound like a very David thing to have done.
Yeah.
But again, I think here you're looking at particularly the Pegasus Knights, and also 15 Knights of the Realm. That is an absurdly long block of knights. That's going to be, but they're just going to go in and hit stuff really quick, really hard, and it's either going to go quite well, quite quickly, or less so. But sort of leaning into the idea of the event again.
I think it's a solid list, but I think it could struggle against some of the punchier ones. It's got a good amount of movement, but I think other people's movement, when you think about the Vampires players or the Warriors of the Dark Gods, just hit harder.
The Peg Knights and the Sky Heralds, I think, are only 2 HP each, aren't they?
I thought Pegasus Knights were 3. You could be right, though.
I thought they were down to 2. I think that's the only thing, is that they're not going to grind very well. So if they are 3, then fair enough. But I think that those kind of units, they either hit and go through you, or they kind of shot their bolt, and that's it. They'll just get ground out. So against some of the more blocky armies, potentially more of a problem. That night block, as Chris says, is huge. So that's going to be a pain to deal with. But actually, outside of that, I think unless you've got units that are going to get one shot by the Peg Knights or the Sky Heralds, probably got a chance.
It's also his big block of men at arms is quite slow, so if you actually want to avoid it for the game, it's not too hard.
I suspect the Peg Paladin is quite choppy, actually, without knowing what half of those things do.
Be a real threat to people. I think we've got a Scourge Killer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, Divine Judgment and Sainted. Yeah.
I think this is the Scourge and Ancient Dragon Killer,
don't they? They sound like they should just immediately do bad things to demons.
Although I think it would be risky, because the Scourge doesn't the Scourge do something against models with an Aegis save? Doesn't it have divine attacks? Can't remember now.
Might do. I don't think it does.
Maybe not. Anyway, yeah, I think you're risky putting anything into a Scourge, really.
No, so I think it's a solid list, and I like the magic. So I think it will mid top table, maybe. I think it depends how much David is drinking.
Yeah, and as much as anything, how much people know what half of this stuff does, because I don't.
So we're suggesting David's going to do very well game 1, and then when the bar opens after game 1, it's not
yeah,
going to go.
David's drinking, this could be, it could get It could go downhill quickly. But if he's not, I think he'll do okay with this. Oh, Ben. Right, before you say what this list does, I think Chris and I should critique it. Chris, do you want to start?
Well, it was. I have had my practice game against it in case I'm needed. It was quite interesting. Yeah, there's some scary stuff in there. Iron Orcs are base AP2 just on their normal. You can often just paired weapons and just muller things. Yeah, I mean, like it wouldn't like a large amount of shooting, but then there isn't too many things with a large amount of shooting, I think. But yeah, it seems pretty solid to me. And the Crown of the Wizard King is definitely the sort of slightly silly, quite funny thing you bring to this sort of event.
Yeah, I really like Double Wyvern, and I love the Crown of the Wizard King. I agree. It's just such a funny item to take, and it just changes like the right spell and the right matchup could just change it slightly, like Shamanism, for example, or just Druidism takes you a bit more risk. And I think the big thing is Death Cheater. Like there's most people plan for an Aegis save, but they don't always plan for a 4-up Fortitude, and I think that can be quite difficult to get through.
But he was the only model you had left in the game.
I think in our game, yeah, that was. I think I was just down to him by the end. So we would have done quite well. Because I think I had one model left. You had two models left by the end of the game, Chris.
It was a bit. There was one combat where literally both our units just disappeared, and that was completely unexpected. I went, "Oh, maybe these are a bit better than I thought."
I have got one question. Why Thorm?
Well,
Why not
so
Pyro?
I mean, for one thing, I quite like Thorm generally, but also it gives me the -1 res, -1 strength spell, which I've already got the Shamanism +1 strength, +1 res spell. So it kind of gives you that double chance of helping your to wound roll. Well, probably more like to be helping your to wound roll. So it's like having a double strength buff, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, fair one.
And especially with the Iron Orcs, as Chris says, you can get them to 2 attacks each quite easily. You can give them paired weapons to get to 3 attacks each. They've got base AP2, and then if you start doing -1 res on your opponents, then they can do quite a lot of damage. I mean, I do struggle for a lack of shooting. I know that. So yeah, Pyro would have been quite nice to have a bit of shooting, but
that's my thought. Because also you can get +1 to wound.
Yeah.
That's my only thought with that one. And it's a button. You can get. I don't know if you can get the bubble spell off in combat, or can you? Is there a bubble spell with flaming swords? Have I made that up?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
So that's what I mean. It just that was my only thing with that. That's my only critique on this. Is otherwise I love it because I think you've got 6 pseudo combat threats or combat threats, and you got the wrecking teams, which are an absolute nightmare. And even if they die, they still suck up shooting for 1 or 2 turns, which means the rest of your army is getting there. And yeah, I think there's some matches you don't want to play, which you probably know better than most of us. But I still think this is a really cool list. I think it's perfect for Bloodbath, and you and your opponent will have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have a lot left at the end of the game, but then that's fine.
But I think you're going to kill a lot.
Yeah, hopefully I'll take some points on the way as well.
Yeah, no, I think you picked a really cool list. Now, the next one I have put, I didn't design this one. It just on the list it went, but it looks very similar to yours.
It is, yeah. John and I played a practice game as well, about a week ago. Yeah, it is quite similar. So he's gone for a Guardian, Behemoth, and a Giant, instead of the double Wyvern. So he's still got 1 Wyvern, and it's still a decent single model. But actually, so in our game, the Guardian Behemoth was probably better. than having a second Wyvern. It did really well. And even though it's maybe not as good as the old big spider, I still think it's got a good number of hit points. Its strength's actually gone up, so it's now strength 6. So slightly less output, but at higher strength. So I think that of the two lists, is the Behemoth better than a second Wyvern? And quite possibly yes. It certainly was in our game anyway, because John beat me. Other than that, and the poisoned spear goblins are quite good fun as well. So there's quite a few things that don't want to go into a unit of 50 poisoned goblins with AP2 when you charge into them.
And when you got flaming
And
swords up.
you're fishing for 6s, yeah.
So I've played this with a Sylvan army before that, and we talked about some of the things. The big one, he didn't play mine with Death Cheetah, which I was extremely happy about. But I think I love that goblin unit. It just spikes all, especially with pyromancy. So I think it's a really good unit. I'd say it's a swordmaster killer. When you think about it, you're still marching towards it. It's constantly got loads of bows, and then when you got there, you may kill a load of it, but it's going to hit you back because it's got that much bodies with poison.
It can afford to lose the 15 or 20 that the Swordmasters will put down and still hit back fairly.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an elf killer. Unfortunately,
the only thing I'm not so keen on in John's list is the fact that he's got heavy armor on the Warlord on the Wyvern when he could have got plate armor. So I think that only having a 4 armor save in combat, if you come up against something with flaming or even some flaming shooting, to be honest, his armor save is not that great. So he's got a 3 up outside of combat, a 4 up in combat, and I think that could make him a bit vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree. I prefer your character setup. I think personally, I think double Wyvern, because it flies, is better than Behemoth. Just because it's more easy to get those flank charges. The only advantage of the Behemoth is it has a rank, which I think is something that's quite advantageous. But yeah, I think I really like John's list. It's another one that's really, really good for Bloodbath. I think, and it's a really fun list to play against. I think the Orc and Goblins book is actually quite good for this.
And nice to have the Banner of Speed on the Iron Orcs as well. So that's just going to help them with the War Cry as well. Help them get into combat quickly and really start racking up some points. And they will get quite a lot of points. The Iron Orcs.
Sorry, John. I'm gonna take that. That was my personal suggestion. After I said 3 things. Well, I said Banner of Speed on them and Death Cheetah on that, and I was like, yes. I agree.
Does that mean he's not got the BSB though?
Doesn't need it.
Yes,
Yes,
the
he
Iron
has.
The Iron Orcs are the BSB.
Yeah, the Iron Orcs are BSB.
Or they just get that standard without having a. I thought it was a enchantment for the unit. I know the unit could be the BSB, but I didn't realize it was just standard.
So making them head bashers essentially makes them the BSB.
So they sit in the middle, and John lines up, and then he comes at you. It's very simple. And then see what comes out. Turn 4, 5, and 6. No, I really like both your lists. I think they're quite cool. They're good fun to play against, and you're going to have great games. Right, here's the other Highborn Elf list, which we've sort of talked about. I don't think we need to talk about it. I think this is a really good list, and I think a lot of people are going to struggle against this.
Yeah, the Ancient Dragon, I think, is the big thing here. It's got so many HP, and it can just without having to worry about any cannons or any rock lobbers or anything like that. There's not a lot of things outside of combat that are going to be able to put a serious dent on the Ancient Dragon, I think. So it's got a good chance of getting quite a lot of points back.
Yeah, agreed. And Kingslayer is awesome, I think, for this because you're going to get those. There was always going to be quite a few cowboy kind of esque things when you think about the Doom Lord or these other vampire counts and stuff. And yeah, Kingslayer was a really good choice.
Yes. Raw strength 7 on the dragon plus that means the other big, obviously, he is one of the big monstery things. But yeah, if he gets a clean shot on one of the vampires or one of the other big, your Wyvern's going to look at that and go, oh no, not so fond of that just because the sheer number of wound hit points it's got over the other monsters.
Yeah.
The only thing I think has been a mistake is the War Banner of Reimer.
Why is that? What?
I'd have gone for Banner of Speed just to get that movement 6.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, get them into combat quicker.
Yeah, it's the only difference I would have made.
What does the War Banner do?
It's +1 strength on the charge.
Okay.
Which is great, but only if you charge.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is a really good list. I think it's one of the top ones.
On fairness, because it's on infantry, it does give them +1 to their advance when they charge. So effectively, it does give you +1 movement on the charge curve.
Sorry, I take it
not,
back.
It's
Okay,
about
no, that is
halfway
better.
down.
That is a better banner.
But it does say only if it's infantry. That bit applies. So cavalry just get the +1 strength, but
that is perfect.
the infantry get +1 advance. They can basically get like Warcry, effectively.
Oh, lovely.
We take it all back, Tom.
Sorry, Tom. I should have known because Tom is also a very good player. I should not have questioned your brain. I do apologise.
I shouldn't have told Tom what the actual rules were for the tournament, and then he wouldn't have brought 30 sword blasters. Yeah.
You see what's couple units of Reavers and things. Yeah.
You should have even set up a new recruit thing, just like play the whole thing along right at the end. So Tom's like, why is Chris obsessed with my battle points? Paul got bold. So I think this is a really good list.
It looks horrible, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this is
just all of it looks horrible.
Just chosen knights. Good magic as well.
You made a small mistake on the PowerPoint, by the way.
Why?
It doesn't look like that's highborn elves to me.
Oh yeah. They're identified as highborn elves according to this tournament.
Yes. Don't tell them yet. No, fair. Do Chosen have 2 wounds these days? I'm a bit behind with it.
I think so, yeah. Or do they have 3?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
That is gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they'll still go down if people really have it, but they're gonna absolutely mess something up, aren't they? Like.
Yeah, and because there's not a lot of shooting, they're really high agility as well. Like who can take on the paired weapon? Chosen with greed, apart from some other chosen that have charged.
Well, so the only thing about the chosen with greed, and actually all of Paul's warriors, is they've all got great weapons. So the greed ones are going to be going last. So you've got to be able to take some punishment before you dish it out. I mean, the wrath ones are slightly better because they'll get the always strikes first in the first round of combat. So they will go at agility, which is agility 5, I think. So that they'll hit hard in the first round, but the greed ones will be hitting last. So you just need to be careful that you don't take too much damage before you get to strike back. And I'm not sure. I mean, if it was me, I probably wouldn't have gone great weapons on everything. I'm not sure he needs quite so many high strength attacks because he's got so much punch in the list anyway. I think he could pick it up a bit.
Don't the greed chosen get? Well, I shouldn't they get weapon master, right? Because otherwise, why would you have all the weapons on them? So couldn't they choose?
They do. Oh yes, yeah, true.
Because most stuff, Halberd will still mulch it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point actually.
I don't think anything can. I think that unit's really good. It's 4 punchy, hard to kill combat blocks backed by some pretty good magic.
And they're all scoring, so he's got a good
Yeah.
chance of taking the objectives as well, I think.
Yeah, so it's a good list.
Yeah, I think this one will do very well, in actual fact. I can see this one being one of the top lists.
Yeah, agreed. Cool, right. Antoine. I've got a bone to pick with Antoine. Of all the people, I don't know what format he sent through his list, but I had to copy and paste it, and it took me ages to like do it, and then I had to delete stuff rather than everyone else's. So I think we should deduct
It
Antoine
might have
1,000
been.
points straight
It
off.
was probably a battle scribe
Yeah,
copy
it looked
across,
like that.
but not. You have to put certain settings, otherwise it gives you a lot of extra information, which is really good to play with, but not so good for
Oh yeah,
reading.
it was really useful actually, just like seeing all the descriptions and stuff like that. And but from a formatting point of view, it was not helpful.
I think the entombed chariots are an interesting option.
Yeah.
I don't quite know what how he's going to use them, because obviously chariots you need to get the charge, so he needs to put them in a position where he's then going to be able to get a charge in a subsequent round. But I've never seen the entombed chariots before.
I'm intrigued because I think because Legion charioteers are punchier, but they don't have light troops. What Anton was finding when he played me before he changed it for Art of War was that he couldn't get them into position. So I'm wondering either whether this is a stroke of genius to get them behind you and into position, or something that's going to come back and bite him. But even if they're not, because they're actually, yeah, because he's still got two big units in terms of the Shakti and the Necropolis Guard in front of you, which are hard to kill. He's got two monsters that are quite mobile, and he's supported by some skeleton cavalry and stuff with good magic. So actually, this is effectively deep striking into your enemy behind to then add some really useful impact hits. Like I'm curious to see how this goes. I think it's some really awkward dilemmas for people.
The two Res 8 monsters are going to be very difficult to deal with.
Mm.
I think at this points level, it's hard to deal with one Res 8 monster, let alone two. So I think that's a pretty good solid choice. Some people are going to really struggle with that. What I'm not sure about is how well protected his hierarch is going to be. So he's going to be in the skeleton cavalry. So his bodyguard is those 11 cavalry models that aren't going to be light troops, I don't think, because I think the character will stop them being light troops.
Also, Antoine has a really good record of being quite careless with them. I was said in the nicest possible way because Antoine is a far better player than I am.
Yeah.
But I've caught him out with a totemic summon. I think someone else has caught him out with something else as well.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that might be able to try and pick on the bunker units, and then that might give him a few problems with the Sphinxes if he loses hierarch and then starts taking wounds from losing his general. That might be an easier way for some people to deal with the Sphinxes, because you've got a few fast lists here that can get around some of this stuff, and things like Mage Blight Gremlins that will cause him a bit of a problem.
Yeah, agreed. I think an interesting list. I really hope the Banner of the Entomb pays off for Anton's sake.
Mm.
I think this is either genius or it's going to struggle.
The Dread Sphinx is going to do quite well against the other monsters, right? Because doesn't it get multi-wound, D3-1, carrying presence? It's like
Yeah.
on the strikes.
Yeah. So I mean, whether he can catch them is one thing, but yes, if he does get the Dread Sphinx into another monster, then I think he's got a good chance.
Right. I think there's only one more, and that's you, Chris. So I think it's in true time. So if you have to play if someone drops out, this is so Ben, you've played this for us. What do you think?
So the Alpha Carnosaur is quite scary and will be quite scary, I think, for a lot of people who have bought big Gribblies themselves. And I think Chris will probably just run it straight at them as well, because I think that's Chris's preferred way of playing, especially when you're the CEO as well. So I think he's going to put some real pressure on if he gets the opportunity to play against some of the ancient dragons or anything like that. Just having an Alpha Carnosaur running at you is no joke. The Ramphadons are what really caught me out when we played. They against the right targets, they just chew through things really quickly, much faster than I gave them credit for.
It's that mark there. They mark a target, and against that marked target, they get like full rerolls to wound, I believe, and their lethal strike on the mounts. And it just because we were the same initiative because you charged me, and literally I removed 12 boars, and you removed my unit because you went first, but went simultaneously. But literally both units just disappeared because of that ability.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I like them as a unit as well. I think they're really cool in this, and they're
Mm.
perfect for Bloodbath because you don't care whether you lose them as long as they take points with them.
Yeah, I think once the Cayman units start going down, then the magic starts to suffer a bit, doesn't it? Because you're relying on them for your Enclave wizards. So if you start to lose those units, then you start losing your magic support, and it could all kind of domino to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But you've still got an Alpha
Really,
Carnosaur running around.
Because the others are all duplications of each other, but the elders have the 2 spells, whereas the other Caymans and the warriors all have the same. They all have whatever the shaman is in +1. It's a good spell, and you have multiple copies of it, but obviously there's only one card.
Well, you can always do +1 resilience as well, which is quite useful. So.
Oh yeah, no, I did use both in our game, I think. Yeah,
No.
I think I made the Carnosaur resilience 7 against one of your units. Oh, it was against the chariots, wasn't it? So they just bounced off it.
Right. Okay. No, I think it's a cool list, and at the same time, we'll see whether you play, Chris.
And if you do see it, it definitely looks like Soaring Ancients, doesn't it, Ben? Absolutely. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
For anything else.
100%.
It's all model agnostic.
It's like Soaring Ancients in year 40,000.
Yeah. What happened was I definitely didn't see half of a particular army that I have from a certain other game. I might not exist in the new edition, and went, I'm probably not going to do anything with them for a little while. What could I use them for? And make me have a fully painted army as a spare thing. I was like, basically, they're all Stormcast models. And initially I was thinking ogres, but I was like, ogres don't really have the armor for it. And then I noticed they'd redone the Saurian book since I'd last looked at it about a year ago for previous Bloodbath, and that you could basically almost do an entire Cayman army, not quite, but nearly. And obviously, a lot of them are sort of the right sort of size models for that. So that's where the idea from this came from. And then it worked out. As I said, I took it expecting not much from it, and then we had a really, I think, quite good game that sort of set into the mindset of the kill everything as much as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. I think that's it. So I think it'd be unfair if I didn't ask for your first, second, and third predictions.
I'm going to have to try and remember what the lists are now. So I'm going to say I think Tony is going to do very well with his Legions of Sin. Tony and his opponents, whoever he might play. I think the Scourge and all of the units in his army are really hard hitting. They're resilient enough that they can stand up to a little bit of punishment, but actually they will dish out a hell of a lot more anyway. And just the mechanic of the Wrath Legions of Sin, I think plays into this tournament perfectly. So I'm going to say Tony for top 3.
Okay, so I'm going. I think Tom Clews with his Highborn Elves and Ancient Dragon. I think you're right with Tony Hale and his Warriors of the Dark Gods. Sorry, no, not Tony Hale. Sorry, I'm going Paul Godbold with his Warriors of the Dark Gods. I think he had the Chosen. And
Yeah.
then I'm going to have an outlier here. Maybe he's not an outlier because he's different. I think Glenn Wilkinson's VC. I think the flying monsters and everything else is just going to be so hard for some people to manage that. That's my third one as well.
Mm. I agree on Tom's Highborn Elves. I think if Tom can play 6 turns in 3 games, which is not all, he doesn't always manage 6 turns. So if he can play 6 turns in all of his games, I think Tom will do well as well.
Yeah. Chris?
I think I think the Chosen will do well. I think the High Elves, both the High Elves, in the right sort of, if there's not something that can dim those sort of masters out a little bit before they get in, or hit them in multiple flanks. If they get clean hits on units, I think they just, as I said, most infantry just go away. So they could do quite well. But I think the Wrath purely just for the leaning into the event but I think it also works well on actually doing well in that as well. Like it's really seems to be geared for this, which is really good to see that people are sort of not just taking their standard list and taking 1,000 points out of it, sort of thing. In fact, quite a lot of these lists have looked like they've really thought about the slightly different scoring system.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that is it. Chris, Ben, thank you for doing most of the legwork, and I've just sort of turned up after making a PowerPoint. Chris, I think goes out to all the community. Thank you for organising this event. It's always good fun.
Yeah, no worries. Don't mind doing it. It's good. It's always a good fun to run actually. And last year I ended up playing, and it's good fun. Like I will admit that often those are my only games of Ninth Age within a year, depending on or usually 1 or 2 against one of you just beforehand to brush the dust off a little bit. But yeah, it's always a good laugh.
Yeah, it is. But otherwise, I think are you putting out the matchups online later?
It probably won't be tonight now. It may well be tomorrow, or I will do a matchup draw definitely before the event, so people can see. And also, if I do match anyone up and they're like, "This is my club mate," I'm quite happy to. I've already received some messages being like, "I'm coming down with these people." I think roughly I know most of the groups that are coming. And what I do is I start off with the spiky players on like one half and then match them up because I know a few people who are a bit more in the local area, and then spread them out from there.
No, cool. Right, Chris, Ben, thank you very much. Best of luck next weekend.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, and this has been
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. I will be in America in 35-degree heat, melting. And then, yeah, I'm good. I'll see you in October sometime. Right. Have a good
Yeah.
one, everyone.
Cheers, James. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Cheers, Chris. Cheers.
Bye.